Continuing through the audience creation process, you've already gone through creating a campaign as well as reports, can move to creating data extensions. This wiki devoted to creating Marketing Cloud data extensions has very detailed information on creating a Salesforce report in preparation for it to become a data extension, how to make that data extension in Marketing Cloud, the importance of running it, the ability to view that data extension data and how it's configured, as well as deleting data extensions when necessary. I have a sample contact brought up here just to reiterate the value of having a data extension. So let's say Tracy here is receiving a communication as an alumni of the university. It makes sense to send to their preferred email field or this Gmail address. And sending to a report will achieve targeting that email address. But in cases where, let's say Tracy needs to receive a communication as an employee of the university, those should be sent to their respective university field, in this case, the UCB email field, because she's employed at the Boulder campus. And in order to target any other field from the preferred email, just labeled email here, we need to use data extensions. That same thought process, creating your Salesforce report to prepare it to become a data extension requires a couple of items. The first is having a contact ID column present. The next is having the email field that you want to target as a column in the report. So the example I just mentioned, we would be wanting to use the UCB email. It's also important to include any other fields you might use for personalization in the email, such as a first name or preferred name. And we have examples of what a report might look like if you are targeting CU Boulder students, as well as CU Denver employees. You can see the respective email fields pulled into each of those reports. I'm going to go ahead and open up our eComm Specialist Training Plan and navigate to the Reports and Data Extensions tab to go through an example so that you can follow along and apply this knowledge yourself. So you should already have all of these report URLs populated here. And for data extensions, we'll be populating these two columns, D and E. So in this first example, we need to identify if we need a data extension or not. And because we are targeting the email field, we can just send to this report. We don't need to convert it to a data extension. So I'm going to say no. And since we don't need to create it as a data extension, we're not going to. In this next example, row 5 of active UCCS employees, we are targeting the UCCS email field. So that's something other than the email field. We absolutely will need to create that as a data extension in order to get that email to the address that we want. So I'm going to say yes here, and this will be the first report that we convert to a data extension. I'm going to go ahead and open up this report so that we can modify it to prepare it for a data extension based on what we just talked about. Looking at my report in Salesforce, in the outline section, I want to add a column of UCCS email, the one that I'm trying to target. And with that modification, I can go ahead and say save. And that's because I can already see the contact ID in here, which I also need, and any other fields that I might personalize by, like employee preferred name. The next portion of creating a data extension is outlined here, and I'll go ahead and walk through it with our example. So in my business unit, I've gone ahead and hovered interactions and then selected import, and I'm taken to a screen of all already created data extensions, but I also have the option to create a new one up here. The first thing that I'm going to go ahead and do is go back to my report and copy the name of it, because I want to name my data extension something similar. It's very important to note the 35 character limit for data extensions. So I personally will often take off this first portion of which campus and which business unit I'm adding it to, because it should usually be identified, but by what business unit you're creating it in. But you might need to lessen other portions of it as well. External key should be left blank. The description is a great place to add more information, but not required. Under source, if your dropdown does not identify Salesforce objects and reports, make sure it does. And then underneath, we want the radio button for source type to read report. And with that, we can choose the select button. In the pop-up, I will paste the name of my report and select the Find Now button. And it finds that report, like the checkbox next to the name of it, and select OK, the button in the bottom. So I typically go ahead and mark everything as included and then uncheck items that I don't actually need. So in this case, I'm not using job group code to personalize my email or for dynamic content, so I don't need it. But notice I did keep other elements such as the contact ID, definitely important, the email address we're going to target, and anything that could be used for personalization. The next important piece is under type. You want to make sure whatever email field you drug in there is set to email address. Next, we want to go through this key column, which I know is a little off center there, but identifying the contact ID as the key always. That I can go ahead and save my configuration with the button in the bottom left of this window. Scrolling down, the last two items is the update type. You want to make sure is set to overwrite. And then the last piece under import completion settings, you can check a box to send notification email to and put an email address in there. So I typically put the person who is going to be running this data extension. They'll be notified if it went successful or not. With those items populated, I can select save in the top left here. Once that data extension has been created, we have instructions for running the data extension as well. And this resource is much more end user facing because it is their responsibility to run these before every single send. So you're welcome to dig a bit deeper on here, but ultimately, if people are failing to do this, they're not sending to an up-to-date audience, which could just be an inaccurate population, but more likely it's a CAN spam violation. So within Marketing Cloud, running a data extension looks like finding it, which you might need to go on to multiple pages if you have many. And once you find the name of that data extension, clicking the checkbox next to it and saying start in the top. You can also check history by selecting the box next to the data extension and seeing file history, the button in the top. And this guy's in progress still, but ultimately would see success or failure. Whoever's set to be notified will get an email like this. And we can see in this case, it was ran successfully. If it indicated failed, that would obviously be an issue. And we can see how many it inserted as well as how many were skipped. So this should be a good indicator of how many folks should receive your message. Once data extensions have been run, you have the option to view the data that's been put in that data extension as well as how it's been configured. The full instructions are outlined in the wiki, but I'll go ahead and walk through that. So I've gone ahead and navigated from subscribers to Salesforce data extensions. From here, you'll see a list of your data extensions, and you can go ahead and click on the name of one. On the right-hand side, we see how those fields were configured when it was initially set up. We can also navigate to the second tab of records to see who has been put in this data extension from being ran. And if for some reason you need to delete an existing data extension, not the most intuitive, you're going to have to do it in two different places to make sure it really deletes it. So the first place to delete a data extension is from under interactions and import. We can check the box next to the data extension and say delete, and one final confirmation. I'll also need to navigate from subscribers to Salesforce data extensions. We'll still find the name of it here, even though I just deleted it under interactions and import. So we'll want to check the box here and say delete as well. And a final confirmation there. And now I shouldn't see it anywhere in Marketing Cloud. And as mentioned here, note that if you accidentally create a data extension with more than 35 characters, it actually does create the data extension on the back end, even though it's not going to work. And so you might need to delete data extensions if you do accidentally create one that exceeds the character limit. We have a quiz here if you want to test your knowledge of data extensions. And going back to the eComm specialist training plan that I referenced earlier, now that we've gone through this one together, and do need to go back and put the name of the one that I created here. So please go through a similar exercise as we did. Identify which of these should be converted to data extensions based on what email field we're trying to target. And if the answer is yes, it needs to be converted, go ahead and create that data extension and populate the names there. If a data extension doesn't need to be created, no need to do that one.